All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here tonight. Tonight's focus centers around the project on protecting biodiversity. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what you should know and what are the objectives really of the lesson that surrounds this project. Okay, obviously last week we talked about the idea of threatened and endangered species. Okay, so really the focus of the lesson and the focus of the project wants you to be able to describe the efforts of cities in the U.S. Endangered Species Act, being able to explain why efforts to prevent extinction and endangerment are sometimes can be controversial. Can you explain the role of wildlife sanctuaries in protecting our biodiversity on the planet, and then describe the role of wilderness in wildlife conservation? So this whole project really centers around the concept of threatened and endangered species and how can we, as stewards of the planet, protect them. So let's take a few minutes and just talk about some information. Okay, when we talk about protecting biodiversity, okay, um, what we've seen are that people are more likely to pay attention, want to protect species on our planet if species are cute. Okay, so um, we take some animals, particularly our own animals, for granted when there are hundreds of thousands more across the planet that are struggling for survival. So, really, what happens to those that are the not so pretty species that also need to be protected? Okay, as stewards of the planet, we really need to make sure that all species are worth protecting, um, and to become ambassadors of conservation, we really need to have, and you, as stewards, really need to draw on three main characteristics. Um, you want to possess a charisma. You want to be able to relate to the world around you, to the natural world, and be able to draw people to the cause. So, with those characteristics in mind, um, part of the project is going to ask you to create a script that's going to help to be able to promote awareness of biodiversity. Okay, so think about that, keep that in mind um, when we think about protecting wild species. Okay, um, we have government agencies, not just in this country but across the world, um, that make decisions to place and remove species from these lists on biological data. However, you as a steward and you as the future generations of stewards of the planet really need to help to these officials consider both economic and political factors um, in making decisions. So I encourage you to become very active with regards to understanding the role, your role in society as individuals who are going to move this generation forward with regards to threatened and endangered species. So let's take a few minutes now and talk about the project, okay? So the projects really want you to do three main things, okay? Um, and the assignment is a little work intensive, not terrible, but it's a little work intensive. It's going to require you to do some research. And it's based on information not only from this protecting biodiversity lesson, but also from the threatened and endangered species lesson that we talked about last week. Okay, and there's three parts to it. Okay, so your first goal is to design a database of endangered and extinct species. Okay, this could be a table. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be whatever you're comfortable with. It could be in a Word document with the following categories. So you want the common name, the scientific name, the classification, the habitat, and the cause of endangerment of extinction. Okay, and it says use the IUCN Red List for information. So here, if you go to the IUCN Red List of threatened species, it gives you a whole bunch here. Um, and you can see what are vulnerable. Here is the list of vulnerables, um, and you can go all the way up to the list of endangered as well. Okay, um, or you can use information from Bagheera website, which here's the website here. Okay, you can see endangered, extinct, and you can follow that. Okay, and what the project wants you to do is to create a database of at least 10 species. So it gives you a suggestion here of a few. You're not, by no means confined to that. As you can see on that other website, there are far more than that. You can pick whatever ones interest you, and you're going to create a database. So here's what mine looks like. Okay, common name. I found the organism's scientific name, making sure that I use the correct binomial nomenclature and rules for naming. Okay, capital first letter, lowercase second letter, in italics, because that is the correct way. Its classification, for example, the Florida manatee, it's a mammal. All right. What habitat would you find this? So, for example, the black lemur, we find it in undisturbed tropical rainforests. And then tell me a little bit about the cause of endangerment. It does not have to be a huge litany, it can be one or two words. For example, the Komodo dragon. Cause of endangerment for the Komodo dragon is because of hunting and habitat loss as populations grow. So, that's how I would format my workbook and fill that in, okay, using the data from those websites. All right, so that's part one. Part two is making a bar graph that plots the number of species as functions of causes of endangerment. Okay, so what's that going to look like? Okay, um, your bar graph, you can use Excel for that, or you can use any other bar graph maker. But here is an example of what a bar graph would look like, and this is just something of what yours would look similarly. Okay, along this axis, you're talking about what is the cause of the extinction. Okay, is it pollution? Is it tourism? Is it expanding society? Is it exploitation? Is it hunting? Whatever. And then the number of endangered species. Okay, so that's how or what yours would look like similarly. And you can do that in Excel. If you create another chart down here with the numbers, you can take those numbers, okay, and then if you highlight those numbers like so, and then um, go up to tables, you can create a table using that data, and it'll generate a table for you. Okay, so maybe in this column I would put the causes. I'd write here CAUSES, and then hunting, etc., tourism, and then I would put the number of animals, whatever they are, based on what your research is. Maybe 14 for one, 3 for another, etc., etc., etc. You'd highlight those, and you would put that into creating a bar graph. Okay, and you could put that into a data table, and Excel will market all that data up for you. Okay, so that's part two. Part three is then brainstorming a way where you can decrease the illegal trade and hunting of endangered wildlife. So it asks you to generate some kind of creative script for a commercial to help persuade hunters and fishers to take wildlife responsibly. Okay, inform them why illegal hunting or overfishing can harm an ecosystem and tell them about the laws that deal with it. So you obviously are going to want to focus on the laws that are found here in the United States. All right. Um, I'm going to show you an example of a script that's been written for Australia, because I want you to think of one for the United States. But here's an example of one that is written specifically for Australia and Australian law. Um, it talks about if a plant is endangered, it means that the species is in danger. There are few of them, okay? It talks about our famous endangered species um, over in Australia. And then it talks about the main reasons why they're endangered. And then it talks about what you can do. Okay. The goal is to help plants and animals survive. And then it asks the public, it puts it back on the public for knowledge. What can you do to help endangered species? Okay. So that's part three. Okay. So what are we looking for? I'm looking for to make sure that your database is correct. I'm looking for your bar graph to be accurate, and I'm making sure that your script is organized and valid, and that it deals with U.S. laws. Okay. Um, so from that, you can do it and submit it here. But I would probably recommend submitting it in some kind of a Word doc or in some kind of Excel doc, and attaching it and sending it to me that way, because that's probably the best way it's going to get to me, because these files are probably going to be a little larger. Or you can send it piece by piece. It doesn't matter to me. But with that, I want you to have some fun with this project. I want you to be creative with this project. It is an important project because it is a global it's a global fixation, really, not just for the United States, but for across the world. And as being stewards, you really need to be mindful of this, because this is really a unifying theme in environmental science. So if you have any other problems or you come across any other questions that seem to get you stuck as you're doing this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, call me, email me, or come into the virtual office. And I look forward to some awesome projects from you guys. And I will be back here next week. We're going to talk about another project that has to deal with biodiversity next week. So have a great week, everyone.